Welcome to It's All Connected, a Marvel Studios podcast brought to you by MCUExchange.com.
It's all connected. Everything.
Welcome to episode 95 of It's All Connected. This is Russ, and back with me is Matthew.
Hey. I now had to miss the awesome Civil War discussion.
I know. If it wasn't, I blame Johnny M. So.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been tough to try and squeeze recording both of those episodes in the same day, but
yeah.
But, you know, we've got a whole summer without much to talk about, so we can always get back into Civil War discussions after we see it 5 or 6 more times.
Yeah, and I'm sure when it comes out on video, we'll have even more to say, because I'm sure there'll be some cool deleted scenes and probably some nice extras and stuff on it. But we'll talk about that in a minute, because I want to make sure you get your chance to say to speak your piece on it.
Sure.
But we got a few news items. The first one is, I guess Kristen Ritter was doing an interview with Collider, and she mentioned that they'll be filming Jessica Jones Season 2 and The Defenders back-to-back.
Yeah, and the word seems to be that Defenders will film later this year.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because, I mean, Iron Fist is currently filming, and, you know, then there's nothing else on the docket, so it makes sense that, you know, they're not going to waste the rest of the year not filming a Netflix show, considering how many they have to work through. So
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like despite what we were speculating, the sort of original plan seems to mostly still be in place, with the Defenders probably coming next. And then maybe, you know, I guess we would assume Jessica Jones Season 2 coming after that. Whether they fit that and Defenders and Iron Fist all into next year, I guess, is the question. But I'd say that probably is likely.
I would think. I can't imagine that they would let that thing sit on the shelf for that long.
Yeah, especially because it'll already have been, you know, I mean, by time, even if they get it out, you know, say it's the last one, November of next year, that's already 2 years out.
Yeah. From
the first season. Yeah, they're not going to wait another 6 months or something. So, yeah, next year, you know, should be the beginning of us getting 3 in 1 year if we get Iron Fist, Defenders, and then JJ Season 2.
Yeah, maybe we'll do, you know, maybe it'll be like February, March for Iron Fist, then June, July, and that summertime for Defenders, and then like September, October for Jessica Jones Season 2.
Yeah, I could see that happening, and that would be exciting because, you know, they've yet to take advantage of the summer for TV.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you know, we've talked about this before, that it doesn't really make sense not to, and especially with the Netflix model, like, you know, it's, especially, you know, everybody's kids are, well, I guess I shouldn't say kids are off school, but, you know, I guess maybe college kids are off school, but, you know, it makes sense. It's a time when people are seeing blockbuster movies. Why not binge, you know, a blockbuster TV team-up of superheroes? So, and then, yeah, Jessica Jones gets to go back in her same slot just a year later, and then I guess 2018 you could do Defender Season 2 and Punisher, or not, Daredevil Season 2, sorry, or 3, jeez.
Yeah.
And Punisher, and, you know, who knows, whatever else they think gets a sequel, Luke Cage, or...
Yeah, it brings up a good point, because we've talked about Punisher, and they've said, okay, he's getting a series, but with 3 coming in 2017, I don't see 4. Like, I totally do not see 4.
And I mean, they just announced it. My guess would probably be that'll start filming late this year, early next year, and then maybe that'll be an early 2018 release. But yeah, I guess it kind of just depends on where they want to put the 3rd season of Daredevil.
Yeah, and then, you know, and who knows? Maybe we don't get Jessica Jones Season 2. Maybe she just thinks they're going to film back to back, but.
That's true.
You know how these discussions go.
Exactly.
Agents get involved and whoever else, and she may just
be,
you know, kind of take it out of context.
Yeah, I would put my money on it though, because I mean, again, they had such a huge hit.
Oh, sure.
I would argue that it's still been more, critically successful than both seasons of Daredevil. In terms of just the sort of press it got, I mean, it was almost all positive, whereas
Sure.
Daredevil has had a lot of negative criticism for both seasons on top of all the positive. But
Right.
So, I mean, and they didn't put the gap between Daredevil, and it just all seems like to wait any longer than 2 years. I mean, 2 years is already kind of, crazy,
Yeah.
but if we view these as sort of like, almost movies or something, or miniseries, then it makes a little more sense. But to go 3 years just seems like, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, especially because Punisher, they haven't started him yet, essentially, so he makes more sense to wait. And we just saw him, a month ago, so if we go by that 2-year model before he gets his next outing, that would be early 2018. So
yeah, and I think Netflix is fine with playing the long game. They want to. I don't think they want to push content out too quickly. They want people to subscribe permanently, and if you meter it out somewhat slowly,
exactly,
you keep them coming. So
yeah,
like I said, I've always thought that 3 shows is probably going to be where we're going to land.
I agree.
I think 4 is honestly. I think
it's
4 is too many. I think it's just too much.
I do too, because we're getting 3 movies a year. We're looking at 2 to 3 series on ABC alone, let alone stuff like Cloak and Dagger, and and then the Netflix shows. So I mean, that's a lot of Marvel MCU content coming out on TV and film and everything each year. So it's a lot to keep up with. I'm not saying someday we might not have 4 movies a year and 4 Netflix shows and all that, but I think they're going to want to ease into it. So
yeah.
I definitely think we'll have, if we get to 3 a year, I think they'll stick with that model for a little while.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. And then on the rumor front, the Hollywood Reporter is saying that Lupita Nyong'o is up for a role, an unspecified role in Black Panther.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty exciting. I think that's been teased for a while, though, to be fair, I think she's been teased to be in pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, she's on the rise, and, I think everybody wants to snatch her up and put her in their franchise. And obviously she already has, she's worked with Disney on Jungle Book and
Star Wars.
Force Awakens. Yeah. So, those usually see a lot of that talent stay in-house. So, yeah, it makes sense. I saw something saying that she might be the love interest.
Yeah, it was interesting. Because I wasn't sure if they were going to go love interest or if she was going to play Shuri, his sister.
Shuri seems to be the, you want to cast someone really big and good for that, and someone that's going to stick around for a while, whereas a love interest could come and go.
Right.
So it definitely seems like if you're going to bring in someone of her caliber, Shuri seems to make a lot more sense, because someone has to play, Shuri. So, but yeah, I mean, that who knows on that? I mean, that could still just be speculation.
Sure.
Obviously, they're casting all of those roles, so in theory, she could be up for any one of them.
Yeah.
But I'd be more interested in her playing Shuri, just because I think that has a more likely chance of sticking around through the franchise and stuff, and showing up in other films.
Yeah.
Whereas a love interest, who knows?
Yeah, we've seen that play out a couple times already.
Exactly. It doesn't seem to have a great track record for Marvel, even if it's a big character like, Jane Foster, Pepper Potts. I mean, those are huge comic characters, and even they can't stick around with huge, actors attached to them. So, yeah, when someone's cast is just a love interest, that never seems like a good thing. It's like they're not a character unto themselves.
Right.
So it's never really a good sign. So, yeah, I would hope that they would use her better than that. And I think she would make a really cool Shuri. I think she looks a lot like Shuri is depicted. So I think that could be really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
But yeah, I would imagine she'll probably be in the film unless some sort of negotiation doesn't work out.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next bit of news I have is from Christopher Markus, who's one of the writers of both Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Civil War. And he's Markus and McFeely are kind of the pairing of the Russo brothers on the writing side.
Yeah, they're doing everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because they're doing Infinity War.
Yeah.
They had they were the sort of producers of Agent Carter. Even.
Yeah.
So
he was Christopher Markus did an interview with The Verge, and he was quoted as saying, "Whether they're a 12-foot purple guy or a raccoon or an android, they're all people, and we're going to write them as people. You can't write them any other way. So ideally, it will stay grounded because you'll completely understand why these characters are doing what they're doing, and you will in some way or another empathize." So. Of course, everybody's assuming that, well, that must mean the Guardians are in Infinity War, which is kind of like the worst kept secret in the MCU.
Yeah, I mean, we keep getting, and I mean, we're part of this cycle that does this. So I mean, I'm not gonna fault us too much, but every time the Russos or Markus and McFeely or Kevin Feige or anybody says even alludes to a character maybe being in Infinity War, everyone's like, oh my God, they're going to be in Infinity War. And it's well, I think it's pretty much a given.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the news would be a TV character being confirmed for Infinity War. But I think I would bet money that at least any superhero that has appeared in a Marvel film to date will be in Infinity War. Maybe some of the side characters and villains are questionable, but I think anybody that's been in an Avengers film or has led their own franchise, I think that's a safe bet. And I mean, yeah, if we're talking about space, it'd be pretty hard to not include them. And you've got to time together at some point. That might as well be then.
Right.
And they've already dealt with Thanos. They had an Infinity Gem introduced in one of their films. I mean, I think that's definitely a sure thing.
Yeah.
I think everybody will be in Infinity War.
Yeah.
So, when there's news that Daredevil or Coulson or somebody will be in it, then I'll be like, oh my God.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
But until then, I'll be like, oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Vision, Thanos, Rocket. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Makes sense.
I guess we're supposed to get some news. I guess all the upfronts are going on right now. I mean, the biggest news that came out today, TV related, was that Supergirl's going to the CW from CBS, which of course
which has been rumored for a while and stuff. Yeah,
isn't really specific to us, but given that all those decisions are happening, word is we'll know for certain whether Agent Carter is done or not in the next couple of days. And it's funny that I've been reading a lot of conflicting reports. A lot of them are like, don't count it out yet, until you hear an official cancel. Mm-hmm. Don't say it's dead yet. So.
Right. And I think it's apropos to talk about Supergirl because that and Agent Carter, I mean, there's a lot of similarities in terms of, they were both shows were purposely left out of the renewal announcements for both ABC and CBS.
Right.
And everybody was like, okay, this is weird. They weren't canceled, but they also specifically weren't renewed. And obviously Supergirl always had that contingency in place to go to CW because it's produced by the same people that do the Arrowverse, and CBS owns CW, so there's an easy in there but with Agent Carter, it's it's maybe a little more nebulous as where it could go, but that transition also gives me hope that if they don't renew it, there's precedent for a show like this to move to another network. So yeah, I mean, hopefully by the time this drops, we'll already know the answer to this question.
Yeah.
But I still don't know. I guess we've sort of exhausted the speculation on it, a few months ago. We have no new information.
No.
So it's still, I really don't have the slightest idea. I mean, it could go anywhere, but I still don't believe that it's the end 100%.
Yeah, I think we both agree.
Even though the films have officially killed her off.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But it's a fitting. It would almost be a fitting time for her show to die, considering this past week has, both in the movies and in TV, has focused so much on her character death.
Right.
So
yeah,
I hope that Agent Carter is the way that Peggy lives on.
I agree.
Yeah.
And the last bit of news I want to talk about is kind of tangentially related, but R.I.P. Disney Infinity.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Disney pulled the plug on Infinity this week.
That's bizarre. Didn't they just release like the third version?
Yeah, it was about a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, that's true.
It was last August is when 3.0 dropped with the Star Wars stuff.
Oh, okay.
But just a couple months ago, I mean, in April, they dropped the Battlegrounds.
Yeah, so, that's bizarre.
So they're still going to put out.
I thought it was pretty popular.
Yeah, there's a set that's coming out for Alice in Wonderland, and a set that's coming out for Finding Dory. And once those come out, that's all there is. There's no more Marvel, no more Star Wars. That's all there is. Which is really unfortunate. I guess they're taking $147 million write down on it, and I guess the main thing is it just wasn't selling like they thought. I mean, they have a huge inventory of stuff, because I mean, it was not just the
they pumped them out a lot.
Yeah, it was not just the development of the video game side of it; it was the physical manufacturing of toys, and
right,
yeah,
which I mean was supposed to be like. I mean, I remember when like that Skylanders thing came out, and even when I saw Disney Infinity, I was like, oh, that seems to just be cashing in on what they're doing at Skylander. But I think the common assumption was that video games and toys were going to start merging into more of a similar thing. And I mean, it makes sense. You get to sell twice as many things, and typical action figures maybe don't stimulate kids that much anymore.
Yeah,
considering they're so used to games and stuff, but so that's why it's kind of surprising that it didn't work out for them.
Yeah, and I guess on the earnings call, one of the things that came up was that video game revenue was up significantly with licensing. So Disney made a ton of money on Star Wars Battlefront, which again, EA developed it. DICE developed it. They didn't, Disney proper
so they don't eat as much of the cost.
Yeah, so it's like
any of the cost.
We just have somebody else, do the development of this thing and basically take all the risk, and then we just get all the licensing revenue. Whereas with the Infinity, that was still all done in house,
right?
Because they've dumped off all of their other video game related stuff. I mean, the Epic Mickey team got shut down. They shuttered LucasArts when they bought Lucasfilm. So they've been kind of getting out of the video game business. So when they did Infinity to begin with, it was a bit of a surprise because they'd kind of been exiting that business. But I guess because of the power of the licensing and the toys, they thought maybe that would be an in for them. But
yeah, I mean, it does surprise me. I mean, because marketing, making toys for movies is still such a big thing. Video games is such a big, revenue earner. It almost seems like something like that is printing money.
Yeah.
You've got this huge binge of popular characters among kids. You're tapping into video games and toys. I mean, I'm kind of surprised.
And just anecdotally, like it would
be popular.
I mean, looking at the store, like when because I kind of float between Walmart, Target. We have a local grocery store that has kind of like a toy. They're a huge store that has like toys and stuff like that. Best Buy. And I mean, yeah, there's a lot of merchandise on the shelf, but they seem to move through it. I mean, there's times where I go and I'll see like, oh, there's 12 Ultrons today, and then I come back a week later and it's like, oh, there's 3 left, or there's none, or so it seemed like they were churning and moving product, but I guess again they specifically said, look, they were not moving as much as they thought. So part of the write down they think is going to be severance package, because they're shuttering Avalanche Studios, which is really unfortunate because I mean, regardless of a property, whether you like it or not, is going away. I mean, there's about 100 people that are going to lose their jobs, which is always the worst end of the story. So some of that's going to be like severance and the cost of closing down offices and stuff like that, but the rest of it is inventory. So the only upside I could bring to this story is if you're looking to get the rest of these figures, don't buy anything right away. My guess is in the next month to 2 months, you'll probably be able to get these things for probably like $5 a pop.
Well, maybe that's good news. I've been wanting to check it out, but couldn't really justify it.
Yeah, I mean,
it should be dirt cheap now.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably get them cheaper than that. I mean, I know when the 3.0 stuff came out, the 2.0 figures went down to like $5 and $6. So if Disney still got a warehouse full of some of that stuff, I mean, we could see these things like really being blown out. And discounted. So, like I said, if you're looking to fill out your collection, because they are really good sculpts, even if you don't play with the game, $5 for that kind of a sculpt is worth it in my mind.
Mm-hmm. definitely.
But yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think the gameplay just wasn't quite there. I mean,
yeah, maybe they just try to coast too much on just, hey, look who it is. It's this character you love.
Yeah, and
it's like, well, you still gotta make it fun.
Yeah, but so anyway, so hopefully those folks over at Avalanche land on their feet and can move on to do other things. So we shall see. So that's it for the news. So before we move on to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I want to give you an opportunity to kind of talk about Civil War, because since you missed the last episode. I
know. I feel kind of like got a spotlight on me now, because I'm trying to think. Unfortunately, I only got to see it opening night, and I have yet to be able to see it again. So I feel like I kind of need to obviously see it a couple more times to let everything sink in.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah, but I mean, my impressions were that I loved it. And this is one of the reasons why I want to see it again, but I did feel like the pacing seemed a little strange. Just because, it's when you go up to the airport battle, you've almost just watched like an hour and a half film, and that's the like culmination. That's the big battle. And then there's like some more film after it. And so I thought that was, a little interesting, but the more I sort of think about it, and I've actually read, I don't know if it was the Russos or Markus and McFeely, but they were talking about that structure and saying they kind of wanted to get away from the typical superhero film structure where something like the airport fight would have been the end.
Right.
The climax at least. And instead it's like, you have that like climax, and then it's almost like the rest of the film was like a denouement, like for like, 45 minutes or something, or an hour. And you sort of get a bit more into the like psychology of the characters and the mystery of everything that's going on, and you get to know Zemo a little more and what's going on between Cap and Tony. So that was sort of the one main takeaway I had, that I thought it was an interesting structure. I think I have to kind of see it a few more times to know whether I think that it worked to have that huge battle like kind of in the middle, or like 2/3 of the way through. But everything I saw was amazing. I mean, I could go on forever and ever, but that airport fight was, of course, incredible. And Black Panther was everything that I could ever, hope he would be, both as T'Challa and as Black Panther in the suit and everything he could do. And Tom Holland really blew me away as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. I mean, it really was great seeing him as such a young kid.
Yeah, I agree.
And just that energy, and he had the nerd. I liked it because, with Tobey Maguire, as much as I love those first two films, even when he was first announced, I was really bummed because I felt like he's a little too the gee whiz. I mean, he was perfect as almost like a 60s Ditko Peter Parker. He was just a little too. I mean, it's that Pleasantville character he plays, know. And then with Andrew Garfield, I really liked that he brought a lot more of the like energy and comedy to the character, but he was also really cool, which was like, that was a fine take, but it was hard to imagine Andrew Garfield being picked on. He just seemed like such a cool guy.
Yeah. He
skates around and he's like really smart and witty, and it's like he's tall and handsome. It's like this guy would be the most popular guy in school. But so Tom Holland really, he seemed to have that energy of like he's a smart guy, he's funny, but he's also very like nervous and a little nerdy and a fanboy, and like, man, his interactions with him and Robert Downey Jr. was just incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so excited that he's going to be in the Spider-Man film, because they just have such a good like energy bouncing off of each other. But yeah, I mean, geez, I don't even know where to go or like what to talk about. But
one of the things that we talked about on the not the last show, but technically the show before, but
right.
One of the things I brought up was Giant Man, and so it was again another kind of like open secret because the toy kind of spoiled it. But
yeah, which they really got to figure out. It's always a toy. That spoils things.
And it's funny because I thought so that's happened before, like when Ant-Man came out and they had a Lego set and they teased a fight between like two Ant-Man figures, one in a a black suit, one in the traditional suit, and then a yellow jacket, and we thought, okay, we're going to get him, and it turns out that never happened. So
that's true.
So I was a little skeptical, I guess, in the back of my head. I was like, maybe we won't get Giant Man.
Exactly. It could have just been like, wow, they just wanted to sell the merchandise or something.
But the way that he moves sluggishly, did that kind of take you aback, or did that kind of make sense to you? Or I'm curious what you think.
I was trying to justify it as I was watching it because it bugged me a little bit. It made the whole CGI-ness of it a little too real. Because I think you see that a lot whenever you see like a giant character in a lot of films. It's like they always seem to move really slow. I'm trying to wrap my head around the physics of it because I don't know if they would appear slower because of their size. To me, I almost feel like they would move faster because they can so easily...
Or just as fast.
Right, but I almost think it would appear faster to us because there's a larger amount of mass like traveling. Obviously, he could move one of his legs from point A to point B. It would appear much quicker than one of our, just because it was going so much further. But then at the same time, because it's going further, would it appear? I have no idea. So I was trying to I was doing this as I'm watching it, well, maybe his sluggishness is because of. So I don't know, but ultimately it did. Even the fact that I was thinking that, obviously, it took me out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's. Part of me thinks it's cool because it's a power, that exists in the comics, and it makes sense that if he could get smaller, he'd get bigger, and he obviously made things bigger in Ant-Man with those discs. Yeah. I guess you could argue that it's harder to pull that off with the human body, which he, addresses, and obviously they're going to use that as the reason why he can't just do it all the time, which is smart. But ultimately, I thought it was kind of neat, but I think it could have not been in that scene, and the scene wouldn't have lost anything. It was almost a little too over the top. I mean, again, as grounded as the film tries to be, there's obviously all these crazy characters, but to me that was that could happen in an Ant-Man movie, and I would buy it just because there's sort of a different vibe to an Ant-Man movie, but it felt weird in the middle of this emotional battle that there's just this giant guy running around all of a sudden. So I don't know. It was neat, but I think they could have saved it for the Ant-Man movie. And I don't think it totally worked in that scene.
Yeah, I thought it was a little awkward. I mean, I mentioned on the show that my justification was, he's increased his mass so much that it's just hard for him to move. He's used to moving an object that has much less mass, and so for him to move an object that has so much mass is maybe more difficult. And I mean, he kind of prefaced it with saying, last time I was knocked unconscious. So he kind of set it up that he has difficulty with doing this.
Right, and I mean, the movement of it wasn't even, what bothered me the most. It was just that it was just whoa, maybe this is one crazy thing too many. I mean, we've already got a lot of crazy stuff going on. Yeah. And I felt like Spider-Man kind of filled the craziness quotient, and the surprise quotient.
Yeah.
So, I felt like, I mean, obviously, the Empire, AT thing was cool. Yeah. And, the minute we saw him, we knew that was going to have to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I guess for me, maybe one of the things it does is, if you're going to have that was a pretty good chunk of battle there. And I guess to keep having him shrink down and punch people in the face, or shrink down and get inside the armor, I guess it's a way to do, okay, let's do something different with him, so it's not just kind of one note, but I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's fine, but you could have also just not focused on him. I mean, Black Widow disappears for a big chunk of the fight, and it's what does Falcon do besides just kind of fly around and shoot guns? It's not like any of them have that innovative of things they do.
Right. That's true.
I would argue that Spider-Man was probably the most mixed things up the most in terms of what he did. So yeah, I mean, it's not like I was sick of, oh God, he shrank again. It's
no, I'm with you.
I think it looks really cool, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure in their minds that was the impetus for it. It needed this big thing, and and you know, they needed a distraction, and it's like, well, what else would they have done? But yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna like knock it for that. I think one of my like, you know, instead of saying everything was awesome, one of the things that I wasn't crazy about is them killing Crossbones.
Yeah, we did
just
touch
felt
on that.
unnecessary.
Yeah.
I felt like that 100% could have just been any of those other mercenaries, and it would have had the exact same impact. You know, there was nothing about it being Crossbones that was the one who like detonated that and exploded that added anything to like the plot or the film. So it could have been anybody. The whole thing was that it's what Scarlet Witch does and all that. So yeah, that was one of the things where it's like, well, that seems like a waste. Like, why bring him? It also didn't seem like the character would do that.
Yeah, like why would he kill himself? Yeah.
Yeah, it just didn't make any sense. It seems like a waste. But at the same time, I was never really crazy about the design of him. It felt a little awkward, like that he was just covered in this big mess of gear, you know, just so they could kind of try and make him, you know, because in the comics he's kind of massive.
Right, yeah.
I guess maybe they wanted to do that and so that he could kind of take on Captain America. I don't know. It just looked I always thought it looked a little weird, and I thought maybe when I see it in the film it'll look better, but even in the film I wasn't crazy about it, and I thought Frank Grillo's voice sounded really weird coming out. Like, I picture Crossbones being like really gruff, and he sort of has like this high-pitched voice, Frank Grillo, and it sounded a little odd coming out of this.
And he acted like he was a little off. Like, we saw him in Winter Soldier, and he was pretty on point, you know? And yeah, they almost made him like a caricature. And that's one thing where movies do sometimes in the sequel that really kind of irritate me. They did that kind of with Eric Selvig. I've seen them do it before, where they take a character that's semi-serious and kind of make him a buffoon. And it's just like...
Yeah, and
really?
A character that had a large role in another film. Yeah. It's like, well, I don't know. I mean, because again, they easily could have had him show up, do whatever he did, and then escape while they were distracted by one of his other guys, like, sacrificing themselves. And then if you want to ever bring him back in the future, he's like waiting in the wings. You've already got the character design, you've got the actor sign or the contract. Now he's gone. It's just one more Marvel villain that, like, they teased us by like, oh, he survived. And it's like, oh, cool, a Marvel villain that survives. And then the next movie they kill him in the first like 5 minutes. Yeah. And of course he's never going to work with him. I don't know if you saw the tweets, but Frank Grillo has been like tweeting some pretty, not even passive aggressive tweets, but he's been kind of like talking some smack about like Marvel and stuff.
Oh, really? No.
About like, I saw it. I don't know if we actually posted it on MCU Exchange. It might have just been in like our messages. Maybe it'll be like on the Pulse that comes out each week. But yeah, he just basically said something. He kind of tweeted it out, or a fan said something, and he was just kind of saying like, yeah, I don't know why they decided to kill him off. And then some fan like said he was a bad actor, and
I saw that,
like, fighting with that fan. Yeah, it was sort of based on that. And then apparently he wasn't invited to like the premiere, and he was tweeting some negative stuff about that. I don't know. Either way, he just doesn't seem like he
had a positive
experience. A lot of couth, you know, when it comes to his relations. So maybe I don't know if that's the reason. Maybe they didn't really like working with him. I have no idea.
That's a good point. Yeah,
you know, from a character standpoint in the film, it just seemed like a total waste.
Yeah. Although John is convinced because we didn't see a body, there's no death. So he said.
I was trying to think about it in my head, but yeah, I mean, the guy was like in a bubble. I mean, even if he wasn't, he was strapped with explosives.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard, even in a superhero sense, to like justify that. I mean, they were on his body. There's nowhere for any of that force to go except into him.
Right.
Then he was contained inside of a magic bubble.
Yeah.
And then he was shot up like 50 floors. So, I mean, even if he survived, he fell down that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I think that would be such a forced thing. And yeah, I just don't. If they wasted him that way, I really don't think they're going to be like, hey, we should bring Crossbones back.
Yeah.
They were clearly like, we don't care.
Yeah.
He's disposable. And I guess that's just the bummer thing is a lot of times it seems like I get that they don't have a lot of. They've kind of justified it in the past by saying that, you know, they've only got so much time to give like the hero's origin, so they can't necessarily give like a big villain origin, and that's fine. But I feel like that doesn't justify killing them off. Like,
right.
You could still have them survive for a potential future installment. So
yeah, and then on the flip side, they let Zemo live. So again, we kind of got the plus there. I'm glad they did that. I'm glad he just
exactly. I am too.
Die
that would have been infuriating.
Yeah,
because he also, and that's something where again I want to see it again because I was also a little underwhelmed by Zemo.
I appreciated the subtlety. I think
I did too. I did too. I just yeah. I don't know. I think it's one of those things I have to see again because I thought the plan was was really intricate and I like that he's sort of this schemer.
Yeah.
I just wasn't really wowed by his by the acting or anything. It just didn't. I didn't think he was that magnetic of a performer. But again, I think maybe I just need to see it again because there's so much going on that maybe I just wasn't focused as much on that. But just sort of my initial impressions were, I think they skimped a little on the villains by making the heroes, the villains, which is fine. I mean, that's kind of the whole MO of the movie, and I thought that was much more fascinating than just the typical like, oh, there's a bad guy, he's going to destroy the world, and we have to stop him. So, I don't knock him too much for that because the whole conflict was much more interesting than any sort of end of the world scenario would be, and we've seen those 100 times already.
Exactly. What did you think about the tag scenes? Both of the tag scenes.
Oh, I mean, great. Obviously the Spider-Man one's not anything too special, but just it's fun seeing him again.
Yeah, it was good and funny. I mean,
yeah, and knowing that it just sets up that like he's going to have a relationship with Stark.
Yeah.
So that was cool, and then the Black Panther one. I mean that's got a lot of cool implications. I mean, Bucky's frozen in Wakanda. That's an interesting.
I didn't see that coming.
Turn of events. I didn't either, but that sets up. I don't think we're gonna like see him in the Black Panther solo film, but it's interesting. And then it's nice to see that Wakanda is super technologically advanced, and that it looks like it's in the middle of a jungle and everything too was really cool. So yeah, I was really excited. I think the only thing with Black Panther that, and I don't even want to say I was disappointed because they might just not have had time for this, but I've been wondering whether they're going to keep the idea that he's like a genius in the films. I'm assuming they are, but they didn't really focus on that too much, because in the comics, obviously he's like one of the smartest people.
Sure.
He's got all these degrees and those, I think biology is his specialty and stuff. So, I don't know if they're going to necessarily focus on that or not, but I think it'd be nice, especially because we've already got the Tony Stark and Bruce Banner is like the geniuses, so I think he would be a nice addition to that to the Science Bros
absolutely
grouping. So they didn't really touch on that in the film or not, so I guess that's still a question mark, but yeah.
Cool. Where do you have you given it like your off the cuff, like where do you rank this in the list?
I don't know that I can yet. I really feel like I'd have to see it again. I would definitely say that, man, that's tough. I don't know. I definitely liked it better than Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't really know. I mean, it's probably high up there, but it's just hard to say because I mean, Winter Soldier and Guardians are my two favorites, and I've seen those obviously a lot more times. So, and then I would also put the first Avengers and the first Iron Man and the first Cap. I really love up there, and then I'd also probably put up Ant-Man. So
it's hard.
It's probably right under those, but it could also be above those. But it's probably in that grouping that I just rattled off of like top 6 or 7.
Yeah, for me, I put it like right. My off the cuff was like I liked it better than Winter Soldier. And Winter Soldier was always my number 2. Like Avengers for me, I think will always be number 1 just because it was the first time we've ever seen anything of that scale, and it was so perfectly put together and so well done that it's like the feeling of seeing that the first time and understanding what that means is kind of special. And so
Yeah.
it's hard for me for anything to kind of top that feeling I got while watching that movie.
And
so
I totally get that. I definitely think that it was a better sequel to the Avengers than Age of Ultron.
Absolutely.
Even though it would be weird if it had been the sequel. Like, you had to have another
Yes.
outing of them together.
Yes.
So it was almost just like, I mean, Age of Ultron just feels like, here we go again, like everybody's together. There's a horde of things that we can kill without worrying about killing them. It was a lot of similar notes, obviously, from the first one. So, which is fine. I mean, it's like, that's kind of like the second Harry Potter book is the same way. It's just like, hey, you liked it the first time, Hunger Games kind of the same way. I mean, that happens a lot. But yeah, so even though the whole thing was like, oh, this isn't Avengers 2.5, or, I still think it kind of was. Like, and again, I feel like I'd have to see it again, but as much as they trumpeted it as this is, above all, this is a Captain America film, I didn't really feel that way.
Even though the words Civil War are 10 times larger in print than the words Captain America.
I mean, there was obviously the stuff with Bucky, and there was definitely stuff with Cap, but I don't think that the story with Cap and Bucky got any more prominence than, like, Iron Man wasn't just featured in the film. I mean, he had arcs, huge arcs of his own. So
I was kind of surprised that he had as much to do in it as he did, to be honest with you.
I was too.
I really was.
And that's why I totally disagree that it's a Captain America sequel. It was 100% an Avengers film. I mean,
or almost like a Tales of Suspense, like a Cap and an Iron Man movie, like
right?
The old...
Exactly. Either way, at minimum, it's Captain America and Iron Man.
Yeah.
It's definitely not. It's not like it picks up threads, obviously, from all the Cap movies, but it also picks up threads from Avengers movies and Iron Man movies, and so I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, I'm not knocking it for that at all.
No.
But at the same time, like, at some point, I definitely would love another, Cap and a couple of people film.
Yeah, I would really like for the next, if they do another one, it to be smaller.
Me too, and I think it will.
As much
we've
as
talked about this, but I definitely think it will be.
As much as I love Widow, I love Falcon. I mean, even Falcon. Like, even if it's just Cap and the Falcon, that's totally fine.
Totally.
But I don't think they need to drag everybody else into it.
Yeah, and I mean, I would love Cap and Blank.
Right.
I think anybody would be fun, but yeah, just something smaller, something more personal. I mean, obviously that had a lot of stuff that was true to Captain America, but that doesn't make it a Captain America film. I mean, the first Avengers had a lot of sort of ideology behind Cap as well, but I wouldn't call that a Captain America film.
Right.
So it's I mean, that doesn't, again, that's not a knock against it or anything, but after seeing it, it's clear that works much better if you think of it as an Avengers film or a Cap and Tony film or whatever, versus the sequel to Winter Soldier.
What did you think about, I'll just do this last bit and then we can move on to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because it kind of ties into it, but the fact that nobody knew it was Sharon Carter until the funeral, like, I thought that was a little bizarre. It
was weird, and actually I was thinking that to myself when the funeral started. I was like, does anybody know that they're related? Did we ever get to that? And then she says it, and then she says why she didn't tell anybody. And it's like, she kept answering my questions. It was strange. I mean, to me, it just felt like they never got around to saying that in Winter Soldier, and then they needed to come up with a reason why. And they kind of shoved it in there. My thing, and I've gotten crap for this because I keep saying this, and it's a total tongue-in-cheek concern, but I keep wondering how are they related? Because what I've seen is that it's her great aunt, which makes sense because there's a massive age gap between them of 70 years or something. Yeah. But as far as we know, Peggy had one brother who we saw killed, and we don't know that she has any other siblings. So I'm like, who are her grandparents that are the brother or sister of Peggy that gave Sharon? So that's my nerd mystery that I don't think will ever be answered because it's so inconsequential.
Yeah.
But it was the one thing that I kept thinking, like, who is she related to?
Yeah, maybe
why don't they bring it up?
She had an older brother that nobody ever talks about, or
right, and that's the thing. Or I was thinking, like, maybe her parents had a kid post the Agent Carter show. Like, obviously that's huge age difference, but I was like, maybe that accounts for the age difference.
Yeah,
but
her dad remarried
then I saw
or something.
Yeah, then I saw some interview, I think, with Emily Van Camp where she said that it's her great aunt. So that explains the age difference, but not how they're related and why she has the last name Carter still. And then apparently then there's a lot of other Carter relatives. You think Cap would want to, like, hey, maybe I should meet them. You know, this woman was important to me. Like, hey, why don't I meet your family? Are they at this funeral for, their mother or whoever?
Yeah.
And it's like, nah, it's just me. No need to explain any further. I don't know. It's totally, just totally like joke criticism, but
yeah.
But yeah, I was glad that she was in it. I mean, I want more Sharon Carter. I was not satisfied with the amount that I got in Winter Soldier, and I wasn't satisfied with the amount that I got in this film, which is another reason why I would love another Cap film, because I think that would be a great chance to have Sharon Carter. I mean, especially they've got a relationship now. It seems hard to ignore that.
Yeah.
I mean, and she could easily pop up in, Infinity War. But yeah, I mean, I would love the two of them together doing something for, Cap 4.
Sure.
I think that could be really cool. So yeah, I mean, I was glad there was a little more Sharon Carter, but as a fan of her in the comics, I would like, a lot more Sharon Carter.
Yeah, I agree.
And I was sad that Peggy's dead.
Yeah.
And that, Haley Atwell didn't show up in like a weird flashback or like ghost appearance or something.
Yeah.
Or like a video will.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
Maybe like a hologram popped up. That could have been cool. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense. They couldn't have. It would have been hard to fit her in there, but it's yeah. I'm glad they took the time to do that scene. I thought it was. I guess that's the most sort of like Captain America focused thing that happened, is to like take this time to like have him mourn. This person who's been so important and who was in his other two films. So that was definitely part of the Captain America sequel. Part, and I appreciated that, and I think it, like you said, I think it tied in nicely with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. this week. I think it was actually the best part of the tie-in this week.
I agree. I totally agree.
Because it had the most like emotional necessity.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, cool. So, and we got some. I mentioned we would do some feedback this week on that. But I think we may push that to next week because I've got some Facebook feedback for Winter Soldier or for Civil War, so we could talk about that next week.
That'll
give us some time to germinate.
Seen it again.
That's the thing I thought about too. I was like, because I'll have seen it again by the time we record again. So I think that'll give me better.
Yeah, I would like to have a little more perspective.
Yeah.
To talk about it again, because there's so many little things that like you're so wrapped up and there's so much craziness happening that I definitely want to go back and like, okay, now I can focus a little more on like the plot and like what people are saying and whatever I missed when I went to the bathroom. And,
exactly.
Like I think I went to the bathroom right when Everett Ross came up, so I almost got none of him. I have no idea what he was about, but I was very confused by the two Rosses. People said that wouldn't be confusing. It confused me constantly because Tony kept being like, hey, send it to Ross. And I was like, wait, the Martin Freeman there's Thunderbolt Ross. Then they're both military guys on the side of the Sokovia Accords.
Yeah.
That we both pretty much just met. It was just, that was a terrible move.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not that big of a deal. But
did you
at the same time?
Did you see it in 3D, non-3D, IMAX? How did you see it?
I did not. So that's how I was planning on seeing it in IMAX, and then the timing didn't work out. So that's the other thing I want to do with at least one more viewing is I want to see it in IMAX because they filmed, obviously they filmed the airport scene in that. So
right.
I want to see how that looks. So how'd you see it?
I saw it in regular 3D, and honestly, I think it was a detriment because there wasn't a whole lot of really cool 3D stuff. There was a few things. But
I felt that about all the films I've seen in 3D.
The main thing is that it really has a negative impact. I talked about this last time. It has a negative impact on the action, in my opinion. When you have a lot of high velocity action and you add the 3D in it, it tends to make it choppy and stuttery.
Yeah.
And where if you're watching it in 2D, it's a lot smoother. And I think until 60 frames per second or 48 frames a second or whatever they settle on becomes a little more standard, and they could do it. I think a lot of fast action in 3D is just a really tough sell. Yeah,
and unfortunately, like I don't know if they do IMAX that's not in 3D, but the one so that's what I saw. The options I had were like 3D IMAX, and I was like, I kind of want to see IMAX and not 3D.
Yeah, which is funny because technically 3D IMAX is not really IMAX. It doesn't use the 70 millimeter film in it. Digital IMAX is kind of like, I don't know, it's a whole thing, but
yeah.
But yeah.
Well, hopefully with Infinity War, since the whole thing will be filmed in IMAX,
which is nuts,
we'll have the option to see it in 2D IMAX.
That would be nice.
Yeah, because I mean, like I said, I want to go see it in IMAX next time, but that means I have to see it in 3D, which I have no interest in because I think Avatar is the only thing I've ever seen that made it feel necessary.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I've mentioned this on other podcasts, but oddly enough, this is strange to say, but I kind of prefer 3D in the home as opposed to 3D in the theater.
I've never experienced that.
And part of it is, or at the Alamo, at the Alamo Draft House when I was in Austin, and there's one here in Houston, but when we were in Austin, those guys know how to project 3D. Like they know, okay, this is 3D. You've got the glasses on. We need to crank up the brightness. We need to tune this thing for 3D.
I think there needs to be more like education as to how to show these things.
And that's the problem I think a lot of these theaters have is you go in there and I went and saw what was it? Was it Batman versus Superman or it was so dark. It was a real problem.
That film is already
and it just
oppressively dark.
Yeah, the projection was just dark, and the glasses were really tinted. It was really not and they did not do a good projection job. So at home
3D and dark is just a mess.
Yeah, and it has to do with the lumens and all that the projector. You can only crank that thing up.
Yeah.
At home, I could take my LCD, and typically when I watch 3D, I crank up the brightness like 3 or 4 notches to kind of give it more light. So it kind of counters the glasses effect. So I tend to prefer it usually at home unless I get unless it was either filmed in 3D or
which is insanely rare now.
It is
at this point.
Or it just does a really good job of projecting in 3D. But then again, too, the ones that are filmed in 3D when they go to Blu-ray, they're usually pretty good. But yeah. So I was curious what. So yeah, my wife hates 3D, so when we go see it, it'll be 2D for sure. So I'm looking forward to actually seeing it that way.
Yeah, I keep every once in a while I'll see a movie in 3D. Like I tried seeing Ant-Man in 3D because I was like, oh, this might have some like crazy 3D stuff, and it was just not worth it.
Guardians,
it was such a mess.
Guardians was really good in 3D. That was one.
Okay, I didn't see that.
Yeah, that was one where I can honestly say, you know what, go see this in 3D.
I will say that the one example of 3D and IMAX that I did love was I saw Jurassic Park when they re-released that in 3D and IMAX, and that actually worked really well considering it obviously wasn't filmed in 3D or in IMAX.
Yeah.
So that was pretty impressive, and I guess an example of if you just shoot a film well, you can convert it any way you want and it'll look good.
Yeah.
But still, hoping that I would like that if we're gonna start putting all these movies in 3D, that people would start filming them in 3D. But
it's just tough too. And then
but at least we're getting the IMAX filming for Infinity War. That'll be pretty insane.
And if they're heavily special effects laden, it doesn't really matter because all that stuff is digital anyway. So
exactly,
it's just the live action stuff that makes
right.
A
difference. It wouldn't be a lot to do.
All right. Well, good. Like I said, we'll do some feedback next time. We'll have both seen it again potentially. And we won't have a big discussion piece on it, so we'll be good to go. But I appreciate everybody's feedback on the Facebook group. We got a lot of posts about Civil War on the Facebook group. So
cool.
If you've wanted to put your 2 cents in and haven't yet, please go ahead and do so, because obviously we'll still have time to talk about it.
Yeah.
So great. All right, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Season 3, Episode 20, Emancipation.
Yeah.
So this is next week is the finale. Or as you hear this, you've probably will be watching the finale that evening or have just seen it.
Yeah.
But the 2-hour finale is coming up, and this was another one of those episodes for me that felt very uneven. I don't know if you felt the same way.
I did.
There was a lot of good, but then there was a lot of not as good.
Yeah.
So
a lot of little plot holes and stuff.
Yeah,
I felt
or just like, yeah, or cutting corners, or making a big deal out of something, and then it matters here, but then it doesn't matter there, kind of thing. I really was surprised at how much tie into Civil War there was.
I was too. I mean, we've speculated on this, and I thought it would amount to them Coulson watching it on TV and kind of making a remark about it. The whole thing with Talbot, I didn't see them actually trying that. And the reason why, and I think it's the reason why it doesn't work for me personally, is that we know that that's never going to have an impact on the film. We already saw the film. We know that there's no mention of Inhumans,
right.
even the Watchdogs apparently know they're called Inhumans, which, as far as I knew, that wasn't a widely known thing.
I thought in Ellis's address he mentioned that.
Maybe he did, yeah. But I mean, it's just another thing. I mean, we've talked about the ridiculous nature of the President of the United States declaring, "Hey, there's enhanced alien people running around."
Yeah.
And then they wouldn't. And then his Secretary of State, who is Ross. I mean, the logic of this universe is that Ross works for and was appointed by Ellis, and yet, I mean, it's messy, but I just, I think that's why it doesn't work for me, is because the idea that Talbot, who is the head of this group appointed by the president, is getting the Inhumans to register, and I think the idea of them registering is interesting, but then knowing that it will have no impact in the films, and that just makes me feel like they're going to forget about it by the next episode, let alone the next season. I mean, we're at the end of the season.
Yeah.
We're not going to launch into a big registration plot line.
Yeah, the only thing I found interesting, and I don't know if, and again, back to Civil War, and I don't know if this was intentional having to do with the TV show or not, but Vision talks about the fact that since, Tony Stark put on the armor, that the number of powered people, superheroes, enhanced individuals, however he phrased it, has grown exponentially.
That's true, and that could be a broad catch-all sort of thing. Which, I mean, again, is interesting. And to me, that's one of those examples of the films have missed a lot of opportunities to just make these broad blanket statements that they could easily make, Like, obviously, the film, when it was being written and filmed, they can't necessarily talk about specific Inhumans or anything like that, or the events, because they don't know what's going to happen. But at the same time, the plot line of there being Inhumans was long ago established. I mean,
right.
Long before Civil War started being filmed, and probably in the middle of it being written. So it's not like they couldn't have. I'm not asking for like a big thing, but a little more elaboration on that. Maybe Ross says something like Vision says, where there's vigilantes running around in the streets, and there's enhanced people popping up all over the world, something like that. And then it's just like, okay, we're admitting that, like, because then, you also have the logic of, why does Tony Stark, when he's looking to fill out his roster, his first idea is, I should get like a 16-year-old kid who's been like running around the streets for 6 months, grabbing like purse thieves to fight in this mega battle between like all these people, when in another part of New York, there's the highly publicized Daredevil. Every major newspaper in New York is talking about this guy. He's an adult. Maybe the logic is he's like, it's just a dude in a suit or something.
Right,
This kid's got powers, but the logic of him recruiting like a 16-year-old is best if we don't think about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Incredibly irresponsible.
Absolutely. But that's Tony. I mean,
sure, and that's perfect. I mean, it makes sense. And again, so it's a small nitpick, but
sure.
Yeah, it's I think it could be an interesting thing, and I think that S.H.I.E.L.D. was playing with that early on, the idea of them sort of being divided along their own lines of civil war. We saw a couple of conflicts between the characters, even the idea of the watchdogs.
Yeah.
But I think they sort of abandoned it when they started focusing more on like what Hive was doing.
Yeah.
And I felt like they kind of re-crammed it in this episode just to like move the plot forward when we know that next week there's so many other things that are going to be going on. They're not going to be talking about registration. We probably won't see Talbot again, So unless they're going to decide to pick this up next year, next season, which I just don't think they will, I guess we'll see how much impact the Sokovia Accords continue to have in the MCU. I hope it's not something that just sort of gets swept under the rug.
Yeah, the one thing that seemed clear to me in watching the show was it seemed that the show version of the events they're portraying seemed closer to the comic version of Civil War, where they're talking about registration, identification,
name on a list,
public identity, all that kind of stuff. Whereas the movie was just like, hey, and I guess it made sense because they were just speaking to the Avengers specifically, but like, hey, you need to sign this paper, so you can't just go off and do your own thing. That your team is not your team anymore. Your team is our
right.
team.
Because the other logic that doesn't follow through in the show is that they weren't in the movies. They're not beholden to any like government, but in the show they literally work for the U.S. government.
Yep.
And then the other plot hole that bothered me is 5 episodes ago we have Ellis saying the world's not ready to know that S.H.I.E.L.D. still exists. You're going to be my Black Ops team. I know you have Inhumans. And then in this episode it's like, hey, do you have Inhumans? Maybe it's time for S.H.I.E.L.D. to come into the light. President Ellis wants you to register. It's like that, it completely goes against every single thing he said the last time we saw him.
So he's a politician.
Well, yeah, I guess we could say that. And maybe the whole idea of the Accords just changed everyone's mind. But
that's kind of how I took it. Yeah,
it was literally the impetus of Ellis like reinstating S.H.I.E.L.D. was like,
yeah.
He literally says the world's memory is not that short, and it's like been 3 weeks, and now he's like, okay,
yeah.
And because Talbot says maybe it's time to step into the light, and yeah, I mean, again, it could just be like now his hands are tied, but I thought the logic would be Ellis would say, hey, you are still my Black Ops team. That's the whole point. And it's not like you aren't sanctioned in some way by the government, because you are. So
and maybe we
have tabs on you. We know where you are.
Yeah.
We know the names of a lot of these people.
Well, but the thing is, he's up until Sokovia, right? He could have his Ellis, speaking of, could have his own little team that he keeps in his back pocket.
Right.
Now you sign the Sokovia Accords, and it's a UN thing.
Right.
Now,
it's the UN, not just the US.
Yeah. If somebody finds out, like, hey, President sanctioned this little team he's got in his back pocket, and isn't abiding by this document that he signed and ostensibly Congress has approved and all this other kind of stuff. It's like, wow, that's going to put you in a bad spot if you basically break a treaty.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the frustrating part for me is it's another example of us doing the writer's job for them.
Right.
Like we just justified something that they could have had one line of dialogue. Like Coulson could have been like, hey, a couple weeks ago, Ellis said this, and then Talbot was like, well, things have changed. It's, the world needs accountability. He can, if Talbot said what you just said, it would have made total sense.
Yeah, you're
like
right.
The logic we're faced with is it just looks like plot holes. So to me, it was just an example of sloppy writing.
Yeah, and given the pace of this episode, I think that's something they could have added in without really affecting. They could have chopped some stuff other places to make that happen.
Especially because, I mean, you could literally drop that line within like about, Coulson could be like, hey, last time Ellis said, and then Talbot could have just been like, look, doesn't matter what he said last time. He could have like cut him off right there. Doesn't matter what he said last time. The Sokovia, I don't know. It could have taken like 10 seconds.
Sure.
So it's like, yeah, to me, it's just like them forgetting what they did, 5 episodes ago.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that bugged me, and just the idea that I don't really think they're going to explore this registration idea. So it just seemed like a little ham-fisted, like, hey, Sokovia, am I right? You've got Inhumans. Let's bring back Talbot. And then next episode, it's like, Talbot who? We've got to kill Hive and his weird, butt-faced people.
Yeah. What's interesting is, not to get too far off topic, but I think of anything, the Sokovia thing has the most interesting implications for the Netflix heroes, because
it does, they're the ones who sort of have the secret well, at least with Daredevil.
Yeah.
Have like the secret identity.
And they're completely off any book, right? I mean, they're not beholden to any government. They're not beholden. They're not even a team. Not yet, at least. They're not even a team themselves. So it's not like they're, kind of organized and kind of do their own thing. I guess maybe the argument too is they're not really acting on a large scale. Like they're not going to foreign countries and saying, "Hey, we're here to go. We're here to help you."
Right. They're kind of operating in the shadows. They haven't really done. I mean, Daredevil's really the only one who's done anything large in scope, and even that was just like gang violence. You know, as far as most people know.
But it'll be interesting to see if they creep any of that into the show. Whether it's somebody coming in and whether the technical. I mean, because I guess that's the other aspect of the show is they're technically. Like if the police came across Daredevil, they would try and arrest him.
Yeah, definitely. Even though they've come across him a bunch and they haven't arrested him.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of like the Batman thing,
but
right?
They should,
it's
like, exactly. Or Spider-Man. I mean, that's a problem that he faces a lot. Is that it's like, hey, you're breaking the law,
right? So I'd be curious to see how they pull that into that realm.
Yeah, I would be too, because it seems relevant and it's a big news. It's the type of thing that if it happened in the real world, it would be. We've never had a news story that big, where these superpowered people are like having a fight over this government treaty. That's an insane thing. Like every person in the world would be talking about that.
Yeah,
especially people who are superheroes themselves.
Yeah. I did kind of like that Coulson. I think Coulson was trying to throw him a bone, Talbot, because he took him to the hideout, which again, talk about something straight out of, Lee Kirby, S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff. It's like, oh, we're in a dive bar, and now all of a sudden we're in your old SSR off the books base.
Yeah, that was great.
So that was totally
just them going into the floor.
Yeah.
Great S.H.I.E.L.D. spy stuff.
Yeah, kind of like the barbershop in Cuba that we saw way back when.
Yeah.
But so that was cool. But he's trying to kind of, I guess, maybe throw Talbot a bone and saying, okay, look, you're right. You've done me, when he spearheaded taking out Hydra, it's almost like I think Coulson felt, okay, you've done me a solid and you've been the good soldier. Now it's my turn to play nice. And so the big thing with this episode was bringing Talbot into the fold and trying to placate him and hopefully get him to see that while, yes, I get what the Sokovia Accords bring, but the fact that we're a sanctioned government agency, we should be given a little bit of freedom to not have to play completely to the letter of the law. And of course, Talbot disagrees with that vehemently.
Yeah, and I don't know that they ever even resolved the issue in the show, which is another thing that makes it feel like a forced tie-in to me, is that they do the lip service and then it's like, well, they move on. And it's like, well, is Talbot okay with it? Is Ellis okay? Like, what did they walk away like, okay, it's fine. They can keep operating this way. Because isn't the problem still the same problem? Like, they're still unregistered and doing all this stuff, and there's Inhumans everywhere. And Talbot brings up like, hey, security footage caught this dead guy and this fairly well-known Inhuman agent in this town where like a thing crashed. Like that would be stuff that obviously the whole government knows about. Like a thing crashed into a town, and here's this footage of these people. And
I'm glad they acknowledged that, because that's one of the things we talked about last week was the fact that like nobody saw this thing crash out in the town.
Like, but again, if it's like obviously more than just Talbot knows about it, it's the idea that like at the end of the episode, it's just like, well, you know what, Coulson, you're an all right guy, and that makes it like all okay. Is like, wait, what does that like? Is everybody appeased?
Yeah,
can't you technically still get like busted by this? I mean, nothing nothing was ever resolved, and that was disappointing.
Yeah, I agree with you. If they end this season, and I'll even give it the leeway of, okay, pick it up again at the beginning of next season. But
me too.
If by the beginning of next season they just ignore all this, then it was a complete. It was a waste. Like, it was just like, well, I guess we have to acknowledge this thing because we have this other thing, and this is what it is. Then to me, it's just like, if you're just going to do that, then don't insult your fan base and just not do it.
Exactly, because that's not what we want by a tie-in. You know, that's like, I feel like there was a time when like Easter eggs were like just a cool little nod to fans, and then with the MCU it became more about like, the egg was like the potential for another storyline or a connection.
Yeah.
And now it just feels like this mandated thing that like is just getting in the way of a logical, coherent story. And I mean, I think the Ultron tie-in was kind of similar in that there was a logic to it that was neat, and it would have made sense if the movies had followed along with the same tie-in.
They should have been on that helicarrier, period.
Exactly. And then B, if they had like followed through with it at all.
Yeah.
But it's like, as soon as the episode's over, it's done, and the movies are never going to acknowledge it. So, you know, why does the show feel the need to like tie themselves down if nobody else is going to tie themselves to it?
And that's the thing. It's like, if you're going to establish rules in the world and you're going to allow this thing to not adhere to it or not really pay attention to it, then I think you do what Warner Brothers does and say, you know what, the TV is the TV and the movie is the movie, and
exactly,
and you know, they're not connected, and then it gives them more freedom to tell better stories. But if you're playing in the world that they established with this show, then you say, okay, fine. And they've done it for the most part. You know, they did it obviously when, you know, with the Winter Soldier tie-in, but for this, if this is the law of the land, and it clearly is at the end of Civil War, then they have to acknowledge it, and that has to come into play. I mean, they can't just brush it under the rug.
Yeah, and I mean, if they do, it's just, then to me, it's a knock against, then it's bad writing.
Yeah.
Because it's an unnecessary, it's an unnecessary addition to the plot that serves no purpose.
Yeah.
And that we're sitting here like trying to make it make sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's like, again, it's like you said, I mean, that's unfair to the fans because you're kind of like giving us this thing that we're going to obsess over.
Exactly.
And it goes nowhere. And we, care about it more than you do. And it's just like, don't introduce it if you're not going to like make it be meaningful.
Because, I mean, let's be honest. If you're looking at the ratings, the only people really watching the show are the hardcore fans.
Exactly.
I mean, you're not getting the casual people to watch this show.
Yeah, nobody's like, ooh, a Civil War tie-in, I should start checking this show out. It's not happening. And if they did, it's not like they're going to be like, yes, I'm glad I watched that. It was essential to my viewing of Civil War. If it was something the movies reference, then there's a case for, ooh, you can get some extra mileage out of this film by watching this episode. But if you've like never watched S.H.I.E.L.D. or stopped watching or something, and you're like, oh, maybe I should watch this episode because it ties into Civil War, like it would be a complete, waste. The only benefit, and again, this is to me the only thing that works, is Coulson reacting to Peggy dying.
Yeah, yeah.
And the idea of Cap like being at odds with Tony and stuff, like that's the thing to me that has the only like connection to the film and is the only thing that's motivated by any sorts of logic or emotion, and it's the thing that works the best. And that to me is the perfect example of a tie-in and how the universe works. It's small, it's subtle, but there's precedent and there's history and there's meaning to it.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I love that. That was such a great thing because obviously we've had the flashbacks to Agent Carter and she found S.H.I.E.L.D. There's just so much connection. And obviously, like, we know that, Phil is a huge Captain America fanboy. So it's such a great moment to see him, like, react to this idea of, like, these are the pillars of S.H.I.E.L.D., the people who started this. And, one of them's dead and the other one's, fighting his family and is a fugitive from the government now. And, so that to me really worked. And I would have been fine with them just leaving that there and not doing the whole, like, Talbot thing the way they did it.
Yeah. We found out that Peggy died at 95, so.
That she died in 95?
She was 95 years old.
Oh, I thought you were saying she died in 1995. And I was like,
no.
Wait, what? Have the movie's been in the 90s this whole time? That would be a revelation.
No.
The whole time the MCU movie world was actually
20 years ago.
They're like, wait a minute.
What?
Yeah, 95. I mean, yeah, she was, because I mean, we have to assume in Agent Carter she's late 20s, maybe early 30s. I think it would be generous to say late 20s.
Yeah,
but...
so at that point she was born in 1921. So if it's 47, she's 26.
Right.
So.
I mean, look, Haley Atwell looks great, but the idea that she's 26 and that is crazy.
Yeah. So I guess the next biggest piece is I thought it was funny when Coulson was walking with Talbot and he said, yeah, sometimes battles need to be fought with secret warriors. I thought that was kind of that was a good use of secret warriors. The Lincoln Secret Warriors initiative I thought was just so ham-fisted.
Or Andrew introducing it back in like episode 1.
Yeah.
Where he's like, these secret warriors, like he's inventing the term as he says it. Yeah. It's just like, oh, that was a much better. It's like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense,
Yeah. But we find that Daisy is being drained in an aggressive manner. She looked,
geez.
I think they
terrible.
Overdid the makeup on it because it was like, I could almost see the white from the makeup. Like it was so. I mean, I get the point. They're trying to make her look pale because obviously.
Oh, and it was like the first bottle. She already looked terrible.
Yeah,
like that was supposed to be like her first sitting. I thought.
I took it as that was not her first sitting.
Oh, okay.
I took it as they've been steady doing this for however long.
That makes a lot more sense then.
But I was like, wow. And then again, it kind of, by the end of it, he's like, oh, we'll just drain all of it. And she's like,
right. Totally casually. Oh, we're going to need all of it.
And she has this weird conflicted look on her face. Cause at first it's almost like fear, but then at the second, and then it's almost like, oh, okay. Yeah, I need to do my part.
Yeah. There were hints throughout the episode that I thought maybe she was, especially in her dealing with Lincoln, I thought she was going to like want to get away because she saw that like he was just using everybody, or I thought maybe the blood draining would somehow like sap the connection.
That's what I thought,
a little bit or something. Yeah. But I mean, no, nothing like that happened. I mean, the whole, again, I'm calling BS on the whole sway thing because again, I felt like with all the other characters, it felt like a sway, but with Daisy, yes, she was acting like herself, quote herself, but the extreme way she did things and everybody she betrayed and tried to kill, the only way to justify it is that she was like 100% like being mind controlled, and she just acted like herself still, but in terms of the way she talked or whatever. But,
yeah, I mean, I guess you can make the argument that, well, she hasn't any Kree blood in her, and that maybe his because it's this whole inhuman thing, that maybe it's a little more potent on her than it would be somebody else. I don't know. I mean,
and that's fine, but they never, again, that's us connecting imaginary dots.
Yeah.
They never, they presented us with the idea that, which I thought was an interesting idea, that it just sort of like switches the way you think slightly,
Yeah.
But with her, I just felt like they went so extreme with the way she acted that it's hard to imagine that like. And they never touched, and maybe they will next week. I don't know. Maybe they'll touch on the idea that like, hey, it's supposed to be a sway, so that means you kind of felt this way a little bit. But if they don't, then it's like, well, that doesn't feel like a sway. It really just feels like, more or less mind control.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but I don't know if that'll play out next week. If people will sort of like reprimand her for what she did or what.
I don't know. I mean, I guess the whole fact that it actually affected her brain in a physical manner, I guess that that carries a lot of weight too.
Yeah, and I agree. I just they kept going out of the way, even in this episode. They kept calling it like sway. That implies something very minor.
Yeah, true.
Very gentle. It's like, well, it just kind of makes you think a little different. But at the same time, they're like, it's like she's addicted to a drug, and like it's messing with her brain. And it's like, okay, well, that's a little, when people are like addicted to a drug, like that's a pretty powerful, like, that changes people's actions pretty extremely. I wouldn't call that like a sway. A sway is is like a light breeze or something.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So that was the only thing. I thought it seemed like they were kind of setting up like a different take a little bit on sort of like the mind control, and then it seemed like it was a little more of a traditional take. Obviously they weren't like zombies, but
Right.
They were poisoned in a way,
Yeah.
So
do you want to talk about the watchdogs getting turned into these?
God,
Man,
I don't know.
dude, the thing that really killed me, and I'm sure you rolled your eyes, but it's like these guys were trying to, I don't know if they're trying to make them sound like 80s action movie tropes, but it was like, they're the disease, let's give them the cure. I was like, They did not just use that dialogue in this movie.
Yeah, and just like when they go to capture James, they're like, let's just capture him, we'll have fun back at the base. It's like,
I was like, oh god,
what level are the, because it's like there's an interesting concept to these people thinking that like they're being invaded or something, or they have to they're being oppressed by like more powerful people, but
they
then
turn
it's
the
like,
watchdogs into the guys from Deliverance. It's just like
exactly. Then it's like, wait, so are they just like weirdos who want to like just like torture it's like, what decide? I just want to know like what, again, to me it was like, it's another example of a lot of interesting ideological things being brought up earlier in the season, and then by the end of the season they just kind of were like, they're just generic bad guy rednecks who want to torture anybody who's different, and the hive sway, it's really just mind control. And it's like they there was like subtlety, and then they're just like, forget it.
Yeah. And I thought
that's been, I mean,
the design was poor. I mean, I get it that it was a failed attempt, but
they looked terrible.
That was terrible. Like,
they had
so
little
terrible.
Yeah, I mean, not to get too randy, but it just looked like a little. Have you ever seen that episode of South Park where there's the people who have butts for faces?
No.
Okay, it's like a real old one, but anyway, Google that. But that's just what it made. I mean, they look terrible. Everything was pinched, and they had these weird little openings, and there was nothing scary about them. They just looked like, and apparently I was reading this. I did not know. I think Doug brought it up in his review, but I guess they're based on an actual Inhuman group called the Alpha Primitives.
The Alpha Primitives, yeah.
Okay, yeah, which are sort of like a slave race of Inhumans that kind of result from like experiments. So they don't look like that, but I guess it's a similar idea.
Yeah, definitely they were going with that, but man, it just did not pull off well.
It didn't work at all. I mean, they could have, again, the creature. I mean, the creature design in this episode was all the worst stuff, because we also had Lash, which I will never get over how much because man, in the comics that character looks so cool.
Well, and it looks nothing like Blair Underwood. I mean, it's clear like, hey, we don't want to have to pay this guy to sit in makeup all day. So
so they got this other guy who, and again, like, I get maybe you want to have this like crazy like ripped muscly dude or something, but even that guy, to me, he doesn't even look that massive of a guy. He's tall, but he just kind of looks like a tall guy. And they don't look like he's got a six pack, but it's like, he doesn't really look like a big monster to me.
And it doesn't look like muscles. It looks like a guy wearing a suit. Like
exactly.
It just was bad. Like it was so.
The coloring and the fact that he's just wearing like slacks and boots is just sort of It's just very unimaginative.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing. It's unimaginative. Like it's not. He doesn't look badass. He doesn't look scary. He doesn't look cool. He doesn't. It's just weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks cheap. It looks very cheap, which is a shame, because then with the special effects, like, I think James's flame chain was amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Like,
yeah,
that looked awesome.
It looked incredible.
Like, apply that to the makeup.
Yeah. Or put a shirt on him and just call it a day. It's just like, if you're not going to
don't
do
try
it,
as hard.
Yeah.
If you're not going to go all the way, then I don't want to see it. I mean, we talked a little bit about that, or maybe we didn't, but I think there was a similar thing with Gordon, in that his eye thing always looked kind of weird.
Yeah.
I think Raina they did a pretty good job with.
Yeah.
It wasn't amazing, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, the makeup in this, or whatever, the prosthetics in this episode were terrible, but the special effects were great.
Yeah.
Because yeah, that flame chain was like, yes, that is so cool. Like that's how I want to see superpowers utilized.
Yeah.
Very inventive, and again, that's how he is in the comics.
Sure.
Because that's actually the only way he can. I believe it's the only way he can use his powers is through the chain, or maybe just through objects. But he uses a chain. It's really cool, and I'm glad that it wasn't just a one note thing where you use it in the alley. Like I liked that later on he still had it. It's like, yeah, he's into it. He's just like, oh, this chain's pretty cool.
yeah.
I think I'm going to keep using that. So I definitely hope he keeps using that chain, and that now before it was like, James is okay, but now I'm like, okay, James needs to stick around.
Yeah.
Because I need to see more of that flame chain.
And then it was just weird because like for the the doctor was like, well, okay, so he uses all of this blood to infect these 4 dudes and does a crappy job at it. So he's going to drain the rest of it and be able to do a better job. It almost just seemed like it was like what? Like, okay, you're going to go from that to what exactly Hive wants that quick. And then the fact that you tie it all in with the fact that he's going to have enough of whatever this is that's going to be able to do a good enough job to weaponize on a nuclear warhead and affect everybody. It was just like way too much of a stretch for me.
They reach too far. Yeah. I really hate when when TV shows feel the need to make the stakes be the entire world.
Yeah.
Because it's just like you're a TV show. You're never going to get that big. Make it be a city. Make it be, you know what I mean? It's something that I liked a lot in Arrow when like there was a big season-long conflict. It was the city. It was the city that was under siege and not someone who's going to destroy the world. The idea of destroying the entire world is just like, that's just way too monumental and ambitious for like this small group of people. And then to justify Talbot, like, hey, Talbot, don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
There's no reason to tell anybody. It's like, what? This is under this logic. Yeah, someone's going to release a nuclear warhead that turns everyone into these weird these human fetuses, and it's gonna like he's gonna enslave the entire world, 7 billion people in the world, and like it's like, no, we got it, us like 6 people can handle it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, too much. It's just too much. It would have been fine if it was like, oh, he's gonna detonate it over a city, like just something like that. But
I will say the one I'll bring it back to Lash in the end, but to cut back to the Lincoln stuff, I was a little nervous with the whole Lincoln thing because I was like, oh man, like the fact that we have this impregnable box that he's in and he's able to just like pop off one of the little bubbles and I mean I like the fact that Daisy said, yeah, we'll MacGyver your way out of here, and they were kind of playing a little fast and loose with the whole I'm going to put the video on loop thing, but whatever that
because he didn't do that later when he's like pacing. She comes back in and it's like, wait, what, did you loop him pacing?
Yeah, it was like, wait a minute, that's what I was saying earlier. It's like, yeah, so they made a big deal out of it then, and they didn't make a big deal out of it later.
I know, exactly. It's like when it needs to fill time, you make a big deal of it, and then when you need to rush through the story, it doesn't matter anymore.
But yeah, the fact that he would be able to take this panel off and access the inner workings of this thing, I'm like, okay, this thing was meant to stop the Hulk. How is it that he was able to just like pull this thing off?
Just like pop.
Yeah, it was like, what? But I'm like, okay, whatever. And so I thought it was a nice switcheroo because I really thought that Lincoln. I kept thinking Lincoln's got to be, and the other bit was when May was very deliberate with him. She's like, straighten up, fly right, and eat your food. And I was like, okay, that's a very deliberate, like May doesn't crack jokes. So it was really deliberate. And so then we find out later that, yeah, she was passing messages to him on the food tray, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, and again, it's good to see him as a team player.
Yes.
And I will say I've been nothing but a harsh critic of Lincoln. I think this episode was probably the best of him. I think he got a chance to do a little bit of acting. I finally sort of bought him and Daisy's relationship for the first time. Yeah. So I think this was definitely his best outing, and I think the reason is they've never really given him a story before.
Right.
And I think this is the first time that they actually gave him something to do. So, once again, it's like it wasn't really fair to like hate Lincoln or to hate the actor. It was just the writers just had no idea what to do with him.
Yeah.
And they just forced him in there because it's like, well, he's the guy that Daisy likes, so we got to keep him around. And what do we do with him? So
Yeah.
So it just shows that when they actually like focus on the character, they can make them interesting.
Yeah. So I thought it was cool that it was a nice little switcheroo that when he's like, oh, Talbot was freaking out that he let him get away, and then he walks out, and I was like, wait a minute. For a minute I was trying to think, I'm like, did we see an Inhuman that could like morph into other, like look like other people or something like that? I was trying to think, and then it was like, oh, Lash, and then they put Lash on it. And again, that was a little weird because I guess he was still somewhat in control. I guess in the argument there could be, well, they gave him that antidote, and while it didn't work, maybe it kind of dialed him back a little bit.
But again, another example of like a plot thread that they just kind of abandoned and left us to be like, maybe that's it. Yeah, it didn't make sense why he was good and he could like talk and he's like, it was just like. And again, he's finally dead, it appears, but that's like the 8th time that we've said goodbye to Lash. We met him at the beginning of the season, and I feel like every 3 episodes he shows up out of nowhere, and it's like, well, I'm not going to be around for a while, and then 2 more episodes is like, hey, it's Lash again. Well, then May's like, I've got to let you go this time.
And what's funny is he's this unstoppable force for the whole season. Like, he's just tearing through people.
Right.
And then he gets to these. Then he gets stopped. I thought it was interesting how they set him up to be, oh, well, his purpose, because Lincoln has gone on about Inhumans have a purpose, and I thought, okay, it's cool that he's the anti-Hive, right? He was the one that was set up to kill him. I thought, okay, that's a cool premise.
Exactly.
And we've seen him just utterly, tear people's chests out and kill all these Inhumans. 2 things I was not real happy with is, one, the fact that James was able to take him out by just whipping the chain. Like, we've seen Inhumans use powers against him to no effect, but yet this...
Especially because he seems to be able to absorb energy.
Yeah.
So you would think that the Hellfire energy would like...
Yeah, but it goes right through him and kills him, and I was like, well, that was kind of easy.
It just seemed like tying up loose ends.
Yeah.
Because May's not even around. It's just like, oh, he's dead.
And I guess if you don't have Blair Underwood, what difference does it make anyway? But
right, but that's another one of the weird implications of this is we got the death of Lash, but we will never see the death of, Andrew.
Yeah.
It's not like Andrew dies in May's arms. It's just this random monster thing, guys, and we're supposed to be like, oh, it's Andrew.
Yeah.
It's emotional, but it's like not really emotional.
Yeah. And I thought it was odd that he was able to pull that infection out of Daisy. I was like, well, where did that power come from? It's almost, again, they're treating him, he's just the device to do what the writers need to be done, whether or not there's a precedent.
Yeah, just like a living plot device. And then it's like, okay, we're done with him, chain through the chest.
Yeah.
Let's ignore the fact that there was also like a kind of a main character inside that body that we just killed off without a proper...
Yeah. Because
they've been teasing this idea that, like, well, at some point, Andrew will come back, and instead it was just like, nope. I feel like that could have been a good thing to, like, show up, next season or 2 seasons from now, just, like, leave him out there and, like, let's come back to him.
Yeah.
But, like, this whole season has been, like, there's been a whole bunch of episodes where they like, kill him, but then he's not dead. And then he, like, goes away, but then he comes back.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's been very anticlimactic.
And I guess technically there's nothing to say that they can't, like, okay, we think he's dead, and they bury him, and then we get a tag episode of, like, the whole closing up where he went through his chest and he, his eyes light up or something
but
like
I feel like they would have had to have done it this episode.
Yeah, I would think, yeah.
It would be weird for, like, them, I don't know, at the end of the finale to be like, hey, remember... I don't know. I mean, they could. Yeah, it's definitely possible. But again, then it just makes him even more of a convenient plot device. It's like, oh, he's still not dead, and it's like, God, how many times are they going to kill Lash? Like,
then it just becomes a joke.
What you want to do with him? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which he is too much of a joke already.
Right, more than it is. Yeah.
Which is a shame because Andrew was a great character.
Yeah.
Blair Underwood was fantastic, and Lash, from a comic standpoint, is very interesting. So they really just drop the ball, and they keep fumbling with it all season.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was weird. Just like, okay, well, we need a reason for Daisy to not be... Again, the blood draining, I feel like that would have been a much more emotionally satisfying, that she slowly was like regaining herself, and then maybe she turns on a Hive. But yeah, just the idea that he removes it, and then I was just like furious with him, like Beauty and the Beast, like picking her up and just like slow-mo, like strings playing, carries her to the... I was just like, oh, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And that's what it reminded me of. Finally, it clicked. It's like, he looks like Beast from the like 90s, like live action Beauty and the Beast show. It was like late 80s, maybe it was.
Yeah. Linda Hamilton.
I just remember when I was
Ron
a kid.
Perlman.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, that's what he looks like. It looks like makeup effects from like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And then him carrying her, I was just like, no, that is... It just looked so corny, and it's like, wait, are we all of a sudden supposed to care about Lash? Like, we've been told over and over that he's like a terrible monster.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's supposed to be like, no, he's not. It's like, he doesn't want to kill Daisy, so it's okay. And it's like, oh, well, that's all right. That's like a serial killer who has a soft spot for one person.
Yeah.
It's like, what a nice guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it removes... At the end, they're like, oh, I guess he wasn't made to kill Hive, he was made to save Daisy. And then it's just like, oh, that makes even less sense.
Yeah.
Because now it's like, are we talking about like is this like a religious thing? Is this like intelligent design? You know, it's like, it's one thing if Hive's been around forever, so the idea that like the sort of inhuman thing would create Lash in response to this like age-old threat is much, much more interesting than the idea that he was created just to save this one person because this one thing just happened to it's just like, that doesn't make any sense. So yeah, again, a lot of interesting possibilities, and then they just were like, nah, let's just make it as blunt as we possibly can. So, man, we're really tearing into
I was gonna say, people listening to this are probably like, man, these guys are bagging on this thing.
And I didn't really feel that way watching it. I was like, that's a bummer, but that's cool. But now talking about it, I'm just like, I think it's because we're coming to the end, and I'm really starting to think about a lot of the kind of missed opportunities and little things that bugged me throughout the season that I was hoping they would sort of justify by the end of the season. And obviously we still have the finale, but you know, given the sort of things they try to tie up here, I don't know. Maybe I'll be completely wrong when I see the finale, but
yeah, I was not expecting her to be freed, Daisy meaning here. I thought that was going to be like the big thing at the end of the season, you know, that we get next, you know, at the end of the finale. So
yeah, though I guess the title could have been a giveaway since it was called Emancipation. So I guess somebody had to get freed.
So yeah, I'm curious to see where that goes. I mean, obviously there's a lot of dramatic play they can do. You know, just the fact that she realized she's cognizant of what she's done. She's remorseful. She's also,
and I think that's why
physical
they did
shape.
Yeah, I think they want to give time for like everybody to react to what happened to her, instead of that just being like right at the end of the finale or something.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see how this ties up. And then, of course, we kind of glossed over I thought one of the better parts of the episode as well was the Mac and Yo-Yo stuff.
Yes,
which was very good.
And I liked that the tag. They've been doing this a little more this season, but you know, you sort of have these action-heavy episodes, and then the tags are more like character moments.
Yeah.
So, and again, you know, I speculated a few weeks back that maybe Mac would die because he was the one who had the necklace. And so this proves to me that he won't die because they gave him the necklace.
Yeah. Well, and it
would have had to have happened in like the finale, but it's too much of a misdirect.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that throws me off is we see whoever's in that shield, that Quinjet has like an old school SHIELD uniform on, you know, with the patch on the shoulder and stuff, and that doesn't look like Mac. Like, I don't see them putting Mac in that kind of getup.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards May.
I am too. Point, I am,
because it's also, I don't think this is anything we ever talked about, and I guess there's a loophole in this episode because Daisy like autopiloted the Quinjet, but it might have to be somebody who can actually fly a Quinjet.
Yeah.
Which, as far as we know, is only May and I think Mac.
Yeah.
So,
and I think they've been kind of. I mean, man, I really hate that because I love Ming-Na. I really
do too.
love her.
And I would almost say that this season it wouldn't happen because I think she's gotten the least character development this season out of any of the characters, especially given how much they've done for her in the past seasons.
Yeah.
You know, giving her like an episode each.
Yeah.
Whereas like Mac and Fitz and Simmons, you know, they're Daisy, you know, whoever, everybody else has gotten a lot of stuff, which is usually indicative of like a character dying. So it's kind of weird if they choose to kill her this season because I feel like, I guess the stuff with Andrew, but, you know, I feel like there hasn't been a lot of like focus on her if we're leading up to her dying. You know, I mean, they've done very little with her character, and I mean, it would be a shame, but you know, it's also like they tend to kill a character that they don't know what to do with anymore.
Yeah, I'm pretty convinced it's either going to be May, Fitz, or Simmons, one of the three.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be Simmons just because then it's just a repeat of the finale last year where she like kind of died. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think, and then the beat of the next season is like, well, wouldn't Fitz kind of be obsessed with trying to, you know, I feel like it'd be too much of a repeat. So I feel like Fitz or May. Yeah. Which again, it just highlights how I don't want it to be any of them.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think that death is a necessary thing to kind of move story forward. I mean, it almost just seems like you're doing it for shock value, and you know, I don't know. I mean, honestly, if the ratings don't improve on this show next season's probably going to be it. Like, I don't.
It's been a surprise every season that it's gotten renewed, to be honest. So
this season more than last. I mean, last season didn't really surprise me too much at all. This season, and I guess it didn't. I don't know. I mean, I kind of go back and forth on my feelings on it, but
yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, I mean, overall, it was an okay episode. I just think the eye rolly stuff just really got to me this episode more so than the others. But I mean, I like where. I mean, at the end of the day, I like where we're at the end of the episode. Like, okay, this is where we are.
Me too.
And we got 2 hours left to see how they resolve this and set things up moving forward.
And there was good character stuff. There was a nice little moment with Fitz and Simmons. And, like you said, all the stuff with Mac and Yo-Yo is great. Though, again, that was another one of my things that I don't think they totally addressed is Yo-Yo was pretty pissed last time and seemed like she was done with S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
And then she just shows up again, and I guess the idea was they told her about Mac, but she also seemed pretty pissed off with Mac last time, and it just it was just like that was.
And where's Joey?
3 episodes ago, it's like 2-3 episodes ago. She like storms out, and seems like fed up, and then it's like, well, I'm back, and nobody addresses like, hey, you left. It was just like, oh, of course you're back. And then Coulson's like, hey, can you do some tricks for me in front of Talbot? And she's like, yeah, of course, Coulson. I love you. We had such a great time last time when you were wanting to round me up and put me in a cage. It was like, that was 2 episodes ago. Like, I don't know. That was another one thing. But again, I'm not mad at her being back.
Sure.
I think she's a great character, and I think her and Mac are great together. And then, you know, James's fire chain.
Sure.
That to me, that was worth everything.
Cool.
So.
All right. Well, next week is the big 2-hour finale. And so we'll be back to talk about that. And like I said, go over some Civil War feedback. I don't anticipate too much news, but sometimes every time I say that, then something happens. So.
Yeah. So, you should say that.
I say that every time.
Hopefully we'll get Captain Marvel casting.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Well, cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Head over to mcuexchange.com for all the good stuff going on over there. Like we've mentioned, articles, reviews, character spotlights. Check out the MCU Exchange YouTube channel as well, where you can get the MCU Exchange show every week, as well as all the cool new videos that are going up over there. For all of my stuff, you can head over to hhwlod.com and check out all the other podcasts I do, as well as if you search on iTunes or Stitcher for a new podcast called Gotham by Geeks. It's another podcast that Daryl Taylor started up, who you heard on the last episode, the S.H.I.E.L.D., our S.H.I.E.L.D. roundup. He was on there as well, so we talk all cool Batman stuff. So until next week, thanks everybody for listening to It's All Connected.